Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Ayy. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock.
How did they do? And is Nick Caserio starting to sound like you know who? It is the locker room, number one source for Texans digital content. The draft is finally complete. Texans, they satisfied half of what was the largest talking point leading into this draft, half of that dialogue. The other half remains relatively unknown. The Texans needed wide receivers. They needed offensive linemen. Those were the two most common things that we spoke on leading into the draft. And they did as good a job of anyone of addressing the wide receiver need. Two teammates out of Iowa State, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll. One guy, Knoll, true slot guy, explosive, can add some other elements, an intermediate target for CJ Stroud, which could help the offensive line. And then Jaden Higgins, guy that we started talking about a little later on in the process, and a guy that they were able to trade back and get both from Matt Campbell's program. So the best thing, we talked about this yesterday, the best thing that the Texans did in this draft was they improved the wide receiver room. The wide receiver room was improved. And that might not be what a lot of people want, but it was where the best opportunity was. They didn't just draft offensive linemen to draft offensive linemen. They improved the wide receiver room. How much did they improve it? That's to be determined. I think the biggest mystery of the offseason we won't know for a long time. And quite frankly, we might not know until mid, late, maybe even beyond that in the season. We don't know what offensive system they're going to run. We don't know what offensive system Nick Caley is going to put together. We don't know how he's going to deal with adversity. We don't know how he's going to maximize personnel. We don't know how CJ Stroud is going to look. And we don't know about the guys blocking in front of him. But we do know, and it's safe to say, this wide receiver room that was a big concern at the end of the season with Tank Dell out and with Stephon Diggs gone, the wide receiver room has improved. So they've done that, and they've done it with young guys and guys with different skill sets. So that's the biggest positive for the Texans, is that they did that, and they improved with two guys, wide receiver Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, and then wide receiver Jalen Knoll. Two of the top 6, two of the top 7, however you want to look at it. So they deserve credit for that. And that's the good. The bad is the offensive line folks still aren't satisfied. And I don't see how you would be if you wanted them to improve the offensive line. The one guy they got, we don't know if he's going to compete to start. We don't know if maybe he can play guard. We don't know what the guy's going to do. There's been talk that maybe he can move inside to guard. I know Nick Caserio has mentioned Titus Howard multiple times. Maybe there's something beyond what Nick Caserio has been saying. Maybe he's saying that Ursary can line up all over the place. I think in a perfect world, this guy and Blake Fisher are your tackles of the future, but we don't know. There's been some really good things said about Ursary and the wide receivers out of Iowa State. Todd McShay has been the guy that has said a lot of good things about these guys. A lot of good things about these guys and what the Texans put together. And he liked these guys before they even drafted them. So the offensive line remains just a bunch of guys. The wide receiver room, a lot more interesting than it was before the draft was completed. Let's go super chat.
You ain't never
Swarm.
Rich Boy J says, if Higgins and Knoll work out, we're set at wide receiver for a very long time. I mean, yeah, I can't really dispute that. And I mean, Nico Collins right now, you paid him. Some would say you got a solid deal on that. I think rightfully so. But if you're able to have two guys on rookie contracts and second round rookie contracts. You're not going to have the option. So I know a lot of people are kind of used to, you pick up the 5th year option. You're going to have guys on second round rookie contracts for 4 years. So yeah, that would be good. And you don't have to panic again, because if you did not address wide receiver this year, you don't know whether you can rely on Tank Dell or not. So you have some youth at wide receiver, and there's some intrigue at wide receiver. And there's a lot of possibilities when you talk about where these guys line up. The most common mention of Higgins has been Nico Collins. A lot of similarities to Nico Collins is what they say. I've also heard the Drake London comparison. It feels a little bit more like that. He's got the basketball background. He can jump up and get it. He can move inside, outside. Nico Collins, I think Nico Collins has added to his bag since he got to the NFL from Michigan. Now, a lot of that might have to do with the time that he took off, but I don't look at these guys as similar. And even if they were, I've said this 100 times, I would take 2 of those, because I don't think Nico Collins is a limited player. I think he can play a lot of places. I heard Steve from formerly of PFF. He did a hell of a lot of coverage. Props to him. Him and his co-host. No disrespect, I just don't know his name. But we all know who Steve is. They were talking about Higgins, and they were saying he might not compliment Nico Collins as much. You're not in the compliment business at this point. With what the wide receiver position was in this draft, you're not in the compliment business. Not trying to put together perfect. We're just trying to get as many good players as you possibly can, and you're not in the compliment business. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Andrew says wait till Higgins adds muscle. I don't think he's that small. I know that I know he's tall, so you might think he's maybe not that muscular, but I don't think he's really that small of a guy. I mean, I'm pulling up this video now, and this is from Round Table Sports. Shout out to Round Table Sports. They were grinding at the combine, so I have some respect for them for sure. But I mean, this is a guy that's really tall. He doesn't look that skinny to me. I mean, I'm sure you always get bigger when you're doing an NFL offseason, but I mean, that doesn't look like
Senior Bowl with wide receiver Jaden Higgins. Jaden, how does it feel to be back on the field, putting on the pads again?
Yeah, it's awesome. I feel like I haven't been on the field in a little while. It was great coming out here and competing with the guys, ready to get back tomorrow and do the same thing.
Yeah, man, for sure. You look like the best wide receiver on the field today. What does it mean to you to really come out here and raise that draft stock?
I just want to show what I can do, what I do on film, what I've been doing all year, all throughout my career. Just continue to come out here and, get the plays down and dominate my matchup.
Any NFL teams you've talked to yet?
Yeah, we talked to a couple. We talked to like 16 teams last night. But yeah, just a rotation of those guys.
My man, and last question I want to ask you is, if you could work with any quarterback in the NFL, what quarterback would it be?
Man, any quarterback.
There you go. He ain't gonna bite that hook. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't look that skinny to me. He probably figures some stuff out, but he's not skinny, and Nolan either. And these are pretty nasty dudes out of Iowa State. Now, I do want to see what it looks like in the red zone. The back shoulder seemed to be a big part of Higgins' game last year. How do they figure that out? Where do they line up Noel? How are they playing off of Kirk and Nico? But I don't know that strength is one of his problems. And I don't blame. I mean, he could probably get stronger, but I don't think he's skinny. So the wide receivers are obviously the highlight of the draft. That was the opportunity, and that was something that the Texans took advantage of. And Nick Caserio practiced what he preached. There was kind of a little bit of an eye roll for me with Nick Caserio that I'll talk about at the end of this thing. And then there's Arianta Ursary, who it's Some compared it to the Blake Fisher pick from last year. I don't know whether that's a similarity or not, because Blake Fisher was a guy who was a right tackle and you already felt good about your tackles. So when I hear, and I think we got to put ourselves where we were a year ago. And I'm going to do that in a second and talk about whether or not the Texans have gotten better. And we're watching a banger of a basketball game as well, as this goes on between the Rockets and the Warriors. They're going at it. There's going to be some chippiness at the end of this game. You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. But last year when they took Blake Fisher, fair or not, they were invested in both Titus Howard at right tackle and Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. They were near the top of the highest paid players at their positions. So they felt good about the offensive line, and some people felt that they had a solid offensive line and nothing to be worried about, and it was going to improve from the previous year when it was basically a big game of 300-pounder musical chairs. You don't feel great about Blake Fisher as a starting tackle. You don't feel awesome about Cam Robinson. Titus Howard, you don't even know if he's a tackle or a guard. So I don't compare this to the Blake Fisher thing. I think Blake Fisher's on an equal playing field with this kid. The Blake Fisher thing, it was really before they had been exposed as incompetent when it came to offensive line evaluation. We saw the constant Kenyon Green fall off. We saw Shaq Mason wasn't ready, and we saw that Titus Howard, he was nowhere near one of the better right tackles in the league. So they hadn't really established themselves as that. As kind of that being their weak point. So with this kid, I don't look at this kid as a might not play. I look at it as, let's see what the hell this kid does this year and put him in the mix. And I'm not sitting here saying you just hoard bodies and hoard offensive linemen. But when Blake Fisher was selected, and a lot of times when we're reacting to this in the moment, you react in the moment and then there's a reaction Monday. It's like doing a post-game show and then doing the reaction Monday. It's a fluid situation. I don't know what this Ursery guy is going to be, but the difference between him and Blake Fisher is Blake Fisher they selected when you thought that they already had tackles that they were invested in and actually believed in. I don't know that they believe a ton in any of these guys. And I don't compare the Cam Robinson contract to this because they didn't know that they were going to get this kid. So, yeah, you paid Cam Robinson $15 million. If Ursery looks better, and Cam Robinson is in Matt Khalil territory, then I don't look at that as like a mistake with Cam Robinson. They had to do what they had to do when they got rid of Laramie Tunsil. I'm intrigued to see what Ursery looks like. I'm intrigued to see what he looks like side by side with Blake Fisher. I'm intrigued to see what he looks like compared to Cam Robinson, and I'm intrigued to see what he looks like at guard. I don't know if they feel good about any single offensive lineman starting. I do find it interesting that Nick Caserio has now mentioned Titus Howard 3 times over the weekend. And I don't know what the point of that is, because that's one of the names that doesn't make you feel good about the offensive line at all. Yeah, with Titus, we assumed he was going to be a tackle. Yeah, you paid him like he was one of the best tackles in the league, sir. And now he's a guard. Like I don't. It's a weird thing Caserio did this weekend, bringing up Titus Howard. But maybe there's more to it. And maybe he's talking about Titus Howard as a Ursery type. Don't know. But that's what that is. Angel or Angel Chapa says they must believe in this offensive line because they drafted one offensive lineman. I don't agree with that. I think that's just the way the draft went. Like, if there's not good offensive linemen, do you just take an offensive lineman just to take an offensive lineman? Because you don't believe. I don't think they have any more or any less belief than we thought. I don't think they know what this offensive line is going to look like until they get to see it in front of them. So I don't think ignoring the offensive line. There's been like a few connections in this draft that I think are like there's no connection, like immediate connection. I don't think not drafting offensive linemen has anything to do with belief in the offensive line. I think the opportunity presented itself to where you could get Higgins, who is a top 5 receiver in this draft. The opportunity presented itself to where you could get Knoll in the top 80. Some would say he was a top 5, top 6 receiver in this draft. Some people were flipping a coin between him and Higgins. I know that's what McShay said, and I think that's what Dane Brugler said. Two guys that are pretty respectful in the process. So I don't think there's any connection there. And I don't think drafting a quarterback has anything to do with Davis Mills. I think they're just kicking the tires and just trying to figure something out. I don't put any, there's no danger of Davis Mills. So I think some of these connections, they don't really make sense. I do agree. It is interesting to take a project quarterback when you could just take a guard to take a guard. I know. I mean, like in the 6th or 7th round, I know that New England did it a lot when Brady was there, just churning backup quarterbacks. And I know that San Francisco discovered Brock Purdy when they already had Trey Lance. But Brock Purdy was an effing winner at Iowa State. Say what you want. He was an effing winner at Iowa State. Mertz got beat out at Wisconsin, got hurt at Florida. And I don't know what they see in him, but it'll be interesting to see. But I do 100% agree with you, Steve. I think there's a big difference between the 6th and the 7th round when if you're drafting a project QB and there are guards available or Jake Majors who could be a center, I agree with you on that. That is a little bit strange, and that will be an interesting thing to check out. Mertz told Gerard he gave him a pump fake. What do you make of that? I don't even know what that means. We're gonna listen to the conference calls together this week. We're gonna play the who is game with all these draft prospects. I don't even know what that means. He gave him the pump fake. What does that mean? Like he taught him at camp or something? No idea what that means. Why even draft a QB? Don't know. Would have much rather had Jake Majors than Mertz. I agree. And then you see where Jake Majors goes. He goes somewhere where they actually know what they're doing with offensive linemen. Tampa Bay. So, yeah, I'm with you. You get a body, then figure that out. But yeah, the quarterback thing. I guess Caserio and D'Amico went back to their roots and decided that they wanted to just churn backup quarterbacks. This one just seems like kind of getting a little bit cute, to be honest. Seems like getting a little bit cute. And that's the thing. I'm going to touch on this Caserio thing because I brought it up. I thought Caserio I kind of thought he made a little bit of an ass of himself this weekend. And it has nothing to do. I don't give a damn about Nick Caserio yelling at media. I don't give a damn about Nick Caserio doing a lot of things, but I just think the overall desire to like minimize what the draft is just kind of weird. Because the draft is Nick Caserio's biggest hope. The draft is what his biggest hope is. Now, he can go up there on draft week when everyone's excited, and he probably has the least amount of media availability of any GM in the league. He does the same interview on 610 like every month, and then he'll talk with Mark and John. But as far as like just open to like press conferences, it's few and far between. So when the draft is going on and he keeps going up there, there's other ways to build your team. You know, nobody had Henry To'oTo'o on their bingo card. If you're hanging your hat on Henry To'oTo'o, then that's giving me flashbacks to Bill O'Brien. And I'll explain this. It has nothing to do with yelling at media, but you minimize the draft and you have a lack of respect for the draft. That was Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was trading 3rd-round picks for Duke Johnson. He was trading 3rd-round picks for Gary and Conley. They traded a 3rd next year for a running back, Woody Marks. And I remember when Bill O'Brien was making moves and he would go up there and praise Buddy Howell or Keon Crossan. That's not what your meat and potatoes is. And Nick Caserio is going up there and talking about, Henry To'oTo'o and You know, some of these other guys on the back end, it's like, man, that's not what your pride and joy is. And you're minimizing something that's extremely important in the draft. Also have the overvaluing of safeties, culture guys, Eric Murray. Compare that to Jalen Petrie. You failed to maximize CJ Stroud's rookie window. And there's also just the other thing that Casario's done that O'Brien did, and this was about the same time that this happens, is his pivots are very extreme and they're very costly if you look at them. And it's one thing to have a plan A, and I think Caserio in the draft, which is where he's actually been the best, despite the fact he minimizes it, I think his pivots have been good in the draft. But he goes from not wanting to give up a third rounder the next year for Keenan Allen to, hey, let's trade for Stephon Diggs. That wasn't even your initial plan. That was your backup plan, Stephon Diggs. It reminds me of O'Brien when O'Brien couldn't agree to a contract with Carlos Hyde. And they were like $500,000 or $1 million apart, depending on what you believe and what the report was. I've heard Carlos Hyde's kind of talked about it a little bit. So what was plan B? Plan B was trade for David Johnson. That's a hell of a plan B. That's a hell of a fallback. That's like saying, hey, we're going to go out to eat. We're going to go to McDonald's. And then all of a sudden, McDonald's isn't open, so you end up at Steak 48. So when he goes up there and he's minimizing and buzz killing the draft, it's just kind of exhausting. It's just kind of a bad bit. And then he's saying he doesn't know what draft for need is. A draft for need, you know what that means, man. It's very, very simple. So we'll see what he does. The other concern I have about Caserio, and I think he did fine in the draft. I gave the draft a B. But the other thing that I think that he might do is he might be a guy who gets a raise at work and then decides he's going to go to the casino every night. Like there's damn sure not like some Jimmy chart. The value, it's just basically like kind of decide. And now you have situations where I don't know if they're getting high off of hitting on guys like Kalen Bullock, but you look at this Jalen Smith thing. I want to see how this ends up, but is this an example of a guy who hits one parlay and then all of a sudden he's just going to bet all parlays, even though it's not the safest thing? I want to see how this turns out. I think D'Amico Ryans has the benefit of the doubt, but it seems like when you accumulate assets, it seems like after these assets are accumulated, there's just kind of a desire to be a little bit reckless. And again, I'm fine with the draft that Caserio had. I think it was good. But I don't know how he's minimizing it. There's other ways to build your team. Look, if you're going to get where you want to get, Nick Caserio, you're going to do it in the draft. It's not going to be because you found Henry To'oTo'o on day 3. It's not going to be because you signed some free agent off of the streets. It's going to be because of the draft. Go through your entire roster. Go through your draft picks, the guys that you like the most. CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, Derek Stingley, Nico Collins. That's Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock. You like that, right? That's what's gonna take you where you want to get. So you don't need to go up there and say, "Oh man, it's just one of many ways." No, we know that. This is the most important though, and they got to figure it out. But the trading just to trade, look, there's excitement when a team makes a trade. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, people like it, but there almost seems like there's just not a method of to the madness when some of these moves are made. Like good trades are made, good things are acquired, and then there's just really no method to the madness. That's what's confusing to me about the Caserio thing. And that's what I don't get. On the super chat, Bobby Trees finally left the Texans. Yes, he did. Robert Woods has signed a 1-year deal with the Steelers. I wonder if Robert Woods was sitting around thinking, hey, if the Texans don't draft receivers, maybe I'll be back. That would be, and that's from Zombie Ate My Bra. Hell of a name. But could you imagine if the Texans didn't acquire any receivers in this draft, and then 2 days after the draft, they announced that Robert Woods was back? I think people would flip out. I like Robert Woods. I was a proponent of bringing Robert Woods in. And I think he's very, very valued by those young guys. Damn sure valued by the coach. But it was time. It was time to go. No doubt. So, Robert Woods, best of luck to you up there in Pittsburgh. It was time. The running back room, I don't feel any better about the running back room than I did before. I feel the exact same. Maybe they got a third down back in Woody Marks. We'll see what that looks like. But the running back room, don't feel any better about it. And much like I said about the offensive line, I mean, the opportunity didn't present itself. Look, I always pound the table for drafting running backs. I wanted to draft a running back on day 1 or 2. And it'll probably be the same thing next year. I think there's opportunity. But with the way that things just played out and the fact that you drafted Higgins and then Judkins and Trey Henderson were gone, I mean, at that point, what are you doing? Just taking one to take one? I don't believe in that. I think Noel's better value there. And if you know what the hell you're doing at tackle, you haven't proven that you do, then that's a good pick too. But the Marks, if he can really catch the ball out of the backfield, that's great. They could use that element. We were talking about Smith and we were talking about Blue. Those were the guys we were bringing up. They at least got a guy in that format. But I'm not going to lay out expectations for the young man because I don't think that would be realistic. So I feel about the same about the running back room. What does a Dameon Pierce resurgence look like? I don't like from his rookie season. I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it. Caleb Johnson was a name that I thought they liked. And then we were talking about Sampson from Tennessee. They liked Marks. See what that looks like. Then they took my guy that I talked to at the combine, Jalen Reed. So the Jalen Petrie types, they're stacking those dudes up. Guys that can battle on the outside. Jalen Reed. I don't mention any of the players or anything like that. I kind of just let them do their thing. But I did see that Jalen Reed did retweet my my conversation with him at the draft. He thought it was funny how he.
What do you like about the Texans defense?
I just like.
So, yeah, Jalen Reed is very excited, very knowledgeable about the squad. And if you've missed that, it's been in the other streams. So Jalen Reed, I think he's going to be someone D'Amico's going to like. Nasty special teams. Probably limited in coverage, a little bit like Petrie. But one of those type of safety that they like. The Graham Mertz thing, y'all are calling it the Gerard Johnson pick. Okay. That's cool, I guess. Gerard's making draft picks now, I guess we're saying. I don't know. All right, cool, I guess. Whatever. You can do a lot worse. I will say Gerard's probably top most quarterbacks. He's at most of the camps. He helped CJ, so I don't know if we need to put that on him. Like if they want to say it was his pick, that's fine. I mean, he might have had some nice things to say about him and worked with him, but as long as Gerard is on your coaching staff, there's a very good chance, there's a better chance that he has than he has not worked with some of these young quarterbacks. That's what he does. That's what he's done for a long time. So I know he might have said that he liked him and that he taught him some stuff, but I don't know that they want to put it on Gerard that this is a Gerard pick. Unless they, I mean, if they do, cool. You could do a lot worse than that. Then you have the hard ass ending to the draft. Keontae Hamilton out of Rutgers and Luke Lachey out of Iowa. They play for hard-nosed coaches, and I'm actually intrigued by Lachey. Lachey is probably one of your most physical tight ends already. He's used to that style of ball. And Hamilton's a guy who is a elite wrestler. I think he did damn near 30 reps of 225. And he'll be someone D'Amico and Matt Burt can work with. And I think he'll be an interesting project to watch. And that's really the difference between the earned benefit of the doubt and the skepticism. And I think you look at every position, you can talk yourself into being optimistic about projects in almost every position. Doesn't seem like quarterback is there. Don't blame people. Offensive line, nobody trusts. There's skepticism. But when it comes to tight end, you haven't seen Nick Caley. So Lachey probably excites you. DB, D'Amico Ryans has established himself as someone who knows how to work with that. And then D-line. So there's a little bit of excitement. So overall, I think this was a solid B. I thought Nick Caserio had a weird weekend. I don't think he functions very well at night. But he's done a good job drafting, and despite what the weird ass things that he said, where he said that the draft is just one of those things, this is his biggest key. This is the best opportunity they have to climb up in the pecking order of elite teams in the NFL and really good teams in the NFL. This weekend, we'll have the biggest decision in that, more so than free agency, more so than undrafted guys. This weekend will decide the height of the ceiling, regardless. And if you're hanging your hat after the year on a Henry To'oTo'o type instead of Ursary Higgins, or the other guys that you took early, Noel, then it wasn't a great season. So let's get out of the BOB phase. Let's see where they go. Now, where are the Texans among the elites? Yeah, everybody loves some good old power rankings. NFL.com actually had power rankings, and this was a guy named Eric Edom. He's a lead staff writer. And let's just see where he put the Texans. So he has Philly, Baltimore, KC, Buffalo, Washington. We'll keep an eye on that. Tampa, we'll keep an eye on that. Rams. He's got the Broncos ahead of the Texans. He's got the Bengals ahead of the Texans. He's got the Chargers ahead of the Texans. And he's got the Texans. So here's what he says. Here's his breakdown. Y'all tell me whether you agree or disagree. He says the Texans struggled to take the next step last season as the offensive line and receiver groups crumbled. I would agree with that. They've laser pointed those two areas of the roster this offseason, with the draft being an extension of that. I might have nitpicked a few selections, Woody Marks, Graham Mertz, which can't make fun of that. I just did that about a few minutes ago. But the overall approach came from a logical place. Now it's just a matter of sorting out the pecking order of those positions and determining if Houston has enough firepower defensively to hang with the big boys of the league. The pressure is simmering again on CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans to bring this team back to lofty expectations we levied on a year ago, and I think they can handle it. Which brings me to this. I said this yesterday, and I was the only person who said it on KHOU. I think the Texans are better right now than they were a year ago. I think they are a better football team right now than they were a year ago. And here's my reason. Yes, I know we felt better about the offense. I didn't feel good about the offensive line, but I felt good about the offense, and I felt like they were going to have some firepower at the wide receiver position. Correct. I did feel that way. Now, it didn't end up going according to plan. Bobby Slowick didn't maximize it, and eventually the injuries took a toll, and Bobby Slowick exposed himself as a guy who's not a leader of men, not capable of making massive adjustments, and he was in over his head when push came to shove as the pressures of the job intensified and became more difficult. He was a disaster. So we felt better about the offense. We felt good about the defense. But here's why I think it's a better football team. Because while I don't feel great about the offense, I do know that Joe Mixon is a dog. I do know that Nico Collins established himself as a WR1, which I don't think we could say last year. We were actually having three-way debates, if y'all remember correctly, about Nico, Tank, Diggs. And Diggs actually looked better in camp. I didn't feel good about the offensive line then. I don't feel awesome about the offensive line now. But I am intrigued to see what this new coaching staff will look like. So I don't feel good about the offense, but this is really just about the defense. Because I think to be an elite team, you have to possess a superpower. And I think this defense could very well end up being elite, and it could very well end up being one of the best defenses in the NFL. And I think it's very convenient and maybe appropriate for people to say, well, you felt good about the offense last year. You felt good about the receivers. But how'd you feel about the corners? How'd you feel about the edge guys? We hadn't seen Will Anderson establish himself as a fringe all-pro. We saw him defensive rookie of the year, but we didn't see that. Will Anderson got even better this year. Do you think he gets better again for his third season? I think it's possible. We didn't know what Danielle Hunter was going to be. Danielle Hunter was in that range where, hey, he could end up being okay, or he could be one of those guys who's on the downswing of his career. He was among the highest pressure rate in the NFL. We saw Danielle Hunter do that. You have the best edge duo in the league. We didn't know that Kamari Lassiter was going to be one of the best young corners in the NFL. We didn't even know if he was going to be a starter. We were talking about Jeff Okudah and Henderson. And now you have Kamari Lassiter. And Derek Stingley had never played a full season, and we saw an elite stretch at the end of the year when he was Defensive Player of the Year in December. We didn't see him do what he did last year. And Derek Stingley did that. So when you have a superpower on your team, whether it's on offense, whether it's on defense, then you have a chance any given time. This team's also more battle-tested now. So am I sitting here saying that the Texans are a top 5 team? I'm not, but I'm saying the difference between this year and last year is they have a superpower. They possess a superpower. And I didn't share the belief in that offensive line last year. I never bought into that. That was one of the things that I was right about. So me personally, I was rolling my eyes at the notion that all is right with this offensive line. So my feels on the offensive line haven't changed much. A lot of people's have. So if you were going back a year ago and you felt good about the offensive line then versus how you feel now, then I can understand saying they're not as good. But it's all about the defense. And I think the defense is a superpower. So that's why I think the Texans are better. Now, they obviously approached this draft trying to improve the offense. That was their main goal. That was what they tried to do. And their success or lack thereof of that is going to really decide where this team is, what they do, and how far they can go. But I do think they're a better team. Now, I also think the division got a lot better. The division got a hell of a lot better. There's a lot more star power. The Jags got Brian Thomas, and the Jags got Travis Hunter. They got a really good wide receiver duo, really young. I think Brian Thomas could very well be the best wide receiver in the division. I said this yesterday. I'll say it again. I think between him and Nico Collins, figure it out. I think if I were on the clock in fantasy, I'm taking Brian Thomas. Just in fantasy. Although I know Nico is that dude. But wide receiver is the one thing that the Texans have really, really improved. And it'll be fun to see how it goes. It'll be fun to see what things look like as this process continues. But it is their best hope to have a good draft. So Nick Caserio can go up there. He can be reckless with picks. He can praise back-end roster guys. Man, this draft's going to decide a lot. And I think there's some things to be encouraged about, and there's some things to be intrigued about. Some people hate draft grades. I'll say it's a solid B. Draft makes fools of us all, though. Let's watch this Rockets game. Let's enjoy the next step in the process. Check out SNL with myself and Cody Stooch. Shout out to everyone who made it out to the party. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate y'all for coming through.
Game in the headlock, localized every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days. Opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number 1. You don't need to try.